Hey everyone, this is Jeff Alberts,
Brian Miner,
Alberto Nunez,
Brad Loomis,
and Eric Helms.
and this is the 3D Muscle Journey podcast, where we bring you world-class coaching and evidence-based education for the natural bodybuilding community.
Alrighty, gang. So as we come to you this week, 3 of the 4 of us are prepping, right? I know I am. Jeff, I know you are. I see you getting your steps every day. Berto, I know you are. You're already shredded. Brian, I don't think that you are, correct?
I'm not. I'm not.
That's
but the
kinda what
topic
I-
still applies for today.
That's kind of what I figured. But you remember well the days of being shredded. And so I guess, me, myself, I'm doing pretty darn good. I'm on low calories. I'm in the teens. Steps have just come up. Body weight's going down, but no suffering yet. There have been a couple of little hungry spells, a little bit of grouchiness here and there. But that's what we wanted to talk about today was, essentially the reality of suffering that has to go along with prep. Because I know it's coming. And I know it's coming where, Jeff, you're going to have to take over. That'd be 5 weeks like last year. It might be 10 weeks out. But at some point, you're going to have to take the reins for me. And boy, Lord help us both, because we're both prepping this time and not just me like last time.
I'm going to take your carrots away, Brad. That's what I'm going to do. Or I'm going to make you track.
Or at least, if nothing else, weigh my carrot, right? Put in my my 70-gram carrot.
I'm not weighing your carrots. No.
But it's a real thing, right? We can diet on the same calories the whole time. And when that energy source in the form of body fat is gone, 1,700 calories when we were higher body fat does not feel like 1,700 calories when you're shredded. And that's something that I think that all people have to come to grips with at some point. But I've got my strategies, and kind of what I'm going to do and what I feel like is effective for me. And it's all different for all of us. But yeah, I'll just open it up to you guys. Let's kick this off. What do you guys do when, for lack of a better term, the pavement is come up to meet your feet and you're suffering?
But the question is are you really suffering? Because the way I see this is like, it's a choice. We're physique athletes. So in a sense, what we're trying to do is maintain all our muscle mass, strip down the body fat, and display it on a stage. So it's like, yes, you're hungry, but it's self-imposed. You have a choice. There's people in the real world, obviously, third world countries and such, that people don't have food. They don't have a choice. Like, we're literally eating anywhere between 3 to 5, 3 to 6 protein feedings per day. That's a luxury in a lot of countries. And we're lifting heavy things with enough energy to do it. So it's like, we're not truly suffering, because I could go to my refrigerator at any point and eat a bunch of ribs or something, or a big strip steak, right, Brian? And then
That's right.
I'll feel well fueled. So it's that's the thing I got to think about. I remind myself, like, when I'm starting to feel a little hungry, I just reframe it that this is a choice. It's actually a luxury. And that kind of helps me out, to a certain degree. It's easy for me to say that because I've done this. We've all done this so many times. But when you're doing it for the first time, like, you hear people, like, you probably hear us right now. You're probably prepping for the first time right now. They're like, okay, I need to just frame it the way Jeff's framing it. But when you feel hungry like that, sometimes it is a shocker. And then that goal that you started out with kind of starts to fade out, and that hunger just takes over. So you become really food focused. And then all of a sudden you're starting to scramble, trying to find ways to prevent it or fight it. And I think just, we all know that hunger is inevitable. It's part of the process, because what we're doing is we're slowly starving ourselves. It's a controlled starve. So to expect you're never going to be hungry or to fight it, you're going to end up probably spending way too much bandwidth, too much mental energy, like, focusing on it, when there's strategies to basically, like, work through it more efficiently and quickly. I know we're going to talk about those strategies, because I know all of us have our own strategies when dealing with it. But I think, the first thing is just mentally accepting the fact that you're going to be hungry. It's inevitable at some point. Like you said, Brad, like once body fat levels get to a certain level, regardless of where your calories are at, because I know some people will look at Berto's calories and go, I wish I could eat his calories. Or, they'll look at someone else and be like, man, I wish I could do it like that guy. But it's like we all, to a certain degree, experience similar things. We all experience hunger. It's just how we handle it is probably a lot different.
Yeah, I think I like the reframing it, like you said, Jeff, that this is a choice. The other thing that I like to do when I'm dieting and prep specifically is like if baseline hunger levels, like your average hunger throughout the day is going up, like, yeah, it sucks, especially when you're maybe on even a more restricted intake at that point. But like that's usually a good sign. Like that's a decent proxy that things are headed. Like your body is now dipping below. It's giving you that feedback that like, hey, we're starting to get shredded here. And so the way I approached it mentally was just to kind of embrace those phases and know like if I can remain poised through this, like the end outcome's going to be that much more satisfying. Like anytime you can get through a difficult stretch, it's going to be much more gratifying at the end. Like if I could snap my fingers and be in stage shape, like that wouldn't be any fun, So part of that suffering, I think, is what makes a prep so fulfilling in hindsight, is because you can take your experience of overcoming that and apply it in other areas of life moving forward. But for me with prep, like it's not even the hunger. Like, yeah, I'm definitely hungry. There's, some strategies to cope with that, but it's just like the low energy, like the reductions in need, the sloth mode that you kind of get into, which is like you can't really work around that. I mean, it's kind of like playing a chess match with your own physiology at that point, like keeping active enough to keep the needle moving, but it can be difficult. And I think just getting my energy back at the end of prep is probably what I look forward to the most. So I think there's ways to kind of approach both of those that we can get into.
Remember that time, Berto, when you like, hey, let's get your carbs under 200, and basically I was like, yeah, okay, let's do that, and we did. It was like 2 weeks before the Pro International, or it was my pro debut. Dipped under 200, and it was like after 2 days of that, man, I was literally on my stool in the driveway, sitting down, washing my truck, like sitting down. It's like, and I like my mindset was like you said, Brian, like, okay, I'm hungry, I'm low energy. If I push through this, I'm gonna get leaner, I'm gonna look better on stage. So I powered through it, and I would stand up, I'd take a lot of the energy, and then I'd move my stool over 2 more feet, and then I'd sit back down and wipe the truck there. Took me like 2 hours to wash the truck, but I powered through it, and I came out the other side like leaner, but I also like I probably went a little too far with it because I ended up having a binge. So, but I'm sure we'll talk about that stuff. But I wanted to point that out here real quick before Berto took the mic.
I
It was
remember
Berto's
that.
fault. I felt like that though. It was Berto's fault. It's like go under 200 grams of carbs.
You looked pretty gaunt after that. Yeah, it was what we needed to do to get the job done, right?
But it is Berto's fault. I got second place in my pro debut. So hey,
Was it second place? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was the Valentine. Yeah, you ran to Valentine. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah.
Was that 2010? Was that your
11.
pro debut?
14 or 11.
11.
Yeah.
11. Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
Yeah, that all three of us
That's
were on
when
stage that time.
Was that the show Lane and Smiley did too?
No, that was the year before, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Good old Smiley. Actually, 2 years before, and then Smiley did it after. But
Yeah.
without getting too far off track.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think before we get into the strategies, because I think people are like waiting for like the hunger hacks, which we will get into. I think, like we've done, like the perspective matters. Like, you said, Jeff, like imagine not being able to feed your kids, man. Like that's different, man. Or like go back through your life and anything that you have survived and endured. It's like, oh, wow, you're in part the person you are because of that. If some traumas, obviously not, but a lot of things that's like, oh, shoot, yeah, like I am who I am. And I've grown up the way I have because of this experience. And I've always said that about continuing education / athletics, like bodybuilding. Like that is why we do this. It's not because we're going to be Mr. Olympia one day. Which, by the way, like if you really like just were to tell other athletes like what Mr. Olympia goes through to become Mr. Olympia, like the amount of drug usage and like health tampering to make like, I don't know, like not even bench like football player money. Anyhow, we do this in large because we love it, and I think a part of us does see how this is going to shape us and help us grow outside of just everything cosmetic. Um, but the dieting sucking part, I think, is the portion that most people who are terrific bodybuilders, because there's some people who start out like being overly focused about on the diet side, and they don't understand just how powerful of a stimulus strength training is. Like those are to me the hardest people to work with, because I'm like, man, you're so good at eating vegetables and fruits and all this stuff, but like you just don't train really hard. So most people listening to this, they love training. They love training really hard. They have grown over time to enjoy the sensations that hard training brings. So much, in fact, that I think sometimes they underplay and forget how hard a really difficult set can be. And if you've ever trained someone who is just completely new to strength training, you will see that most people, they literally, like if it's a 15 rep set, they'll quit at set 5. Like their brain tells them like rep 5, like stop there. Like most people, they stop not because they can't do it. They stop because they're having these feelings that feel wrong almost. I mean, think about it. Think about like the last hard set you did. If you were just sitting there and your body was going through those sensations, like the heart racing, the pain, the adrenaline, those fight or flight hormones, you'd be concerned. But we look forward to that. And if anything, we want to throw ourselves like even deeper into that abyss. And the same thing when it comes to your ability to tolerate everything that comes from dieting. Like you didn't learn to be as hard of a worker as you are now overnight. Like we can all go back to certain reps on a squat, especially where you're like, this is crazy, but I'm gonna dip back down and I'm gonna find out what's in there. Um, Same thing with dieting, like learning to exert yourself or to withstand. That is an acquired skill. Like something that I tallied up a few months back was how much time I've spent at essential body fat levels, and it's been a total of about 2 years of my life. 2 years of my life, like living in that state, like where your body's just really scared. um, so for me, that experience now is vastly different compared to like when I first started doing it. Like when you compare my first like squat at RPE 10 and I failed in front of the gym, like what that was like compared to like, years afterwards is after I'd done it a few times. So when it comes to what you feel, how you experience this process, it's something that you will get better at over time, much in the same way that you develop how your thick skin when it comes to training, to the point where, shoot, like if anything, once you develop that, it's like half the time you're spending just as much time, I'd say, pacing yourself, trying not to destroy yourself on like the set one or on the first exercise, taking into consideration that you have a whole workout left, that you have a whole week of training left, you have weeks on this block. But that took time to develop. And the same thing, you're not going to learn how to do this overnight. Like there's something funny about messing with people's food that just like really opens up this can of worms, all these dormant genes that we all have, because, Fathom at some point was a very real problem when you go back and look at the history of just human history. Um, so first time you get there, first time you find yourself in this sort of like RPE 9, like prep grind or fat loss phase grind. Um, yeah, it's scary. It's unsettling, but you do get better at it over time. And some things, no matter what advice we dispense here, it's just going to be a matter of you just sitting there longer.
2 years in that state. That's a good way to frame it. Because like, yeah, I think I've done 15 preps. So maybe like out of those, each prep's like maybe 2 or 3 months where you're just like, yeah, you're sitting in that. So yeah, that's a decent amount of time that you're dealing with that in your life. So yeah, you're going to build up resilience by doing that. like I said, the first time you're there, you're just like, whoa. It doesn't matter what we say right now. You're going to be like, whoa.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a trainable trait, resilience. And I think you have to remind yourself of that during your first prep. This is going to get easier. It's like it's like cold plunges. It's like they're probably not good for a whole lot, maybe outside of just building mental resilience and getting something hard out of the way early on and makes the rest of the day feel easier. So for first time preppers, maybe think of it as once I'm done with this, like there's probably a pretty productive stretch of life ahead coming out of this if I do this right and I can come out of this with that kind of boosted self-efficacy to suffer a little bit. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Berto, is like it is a trainable trait. And it does get easier. And I think that's one thing. A lot of people want to look like Dirk Emmerich, disgustingly shredded their first time out. And like Dirk didn't look like that his first
No.
prep, And so it's like, why would we expect to our first time? So it takes time and there's levels to it, but that's what's enjoyable about the process. Like each prep, like even if you're first time you get like truly peeled, the goal next time is like, let's make this less invasive than it was the time before that. Let's try to balance this with life more effectively than I did the past. So yeah.
I think one thing people confuse sometimes is just because like you're a dog at training doesn't mean you're gonna be that at this. Like it doesn't have as much transfer as you think. Like we know a lot of, for example, really hard training powerlifters, even those who have to worry about their weight a little bit more because they're kind of floating in the lighter weight classes where they tell you you're nuts for what you do with it, like dieting for that many months on end. So they're two different things. Like it's a whole different type of grind to learn. Um, yeah, they're just not related. Like you almost have to learn those skills separately because shoot, the first time you train, like, that's another thing. It's just there's just existing, which I think people get they get that component last, just everything outside of the gym. And then there's being able to train in that sort of state. That's a different like skill compared to off-season training. The first time you get there, the first thing you think about is like, man, I'm gonna be so much better at training in the off season, like moving forward because of what I'm having to do right here. And that's very clear because our training means a lot to us. But the same thing when it comes to the outside of the gym stuff, it's like the first few times, yeah, you kind of suck. But same way, it's like, hey, you kind of learn how to just be better at being a human because that's what the majority of our time is spent outside of training and eating.
I know that one of my strategies early on when I started prep was just um, probably exorbitantly high and probably unnecessarily high protein intake. And it's funny because that still kind of continues to this day. It's kind of like that is my go-to is what can I eat that's got a lot of protein in it because it's satiating. It helps kind of star keep away that starvation, I guess you might say, or just that feeling of being hungry. But it only takes you so far. That's one thing I learned basically in last prep. It only takes you so far, and you're going to be hungry, whether it's high protein or lower protein and higher carbohydrate. If you're in that caloric deficit. Um, but it's still to this day, it's kinda like that first split that you did or that favorite split, you always kinda wanna go back to it again, you know? It's like that's kind of my go-to. When I start getting really hungry, I start searching for the proteins and more I should probably elaborate, not really protein powder, but Greek yogurt, chicken breast, volumes of egg whites, and hard-boiled egg whites and anything protein related because it seems like it staves off hunger a little bit. Um, but yeah, at the same time, it really only gets you so far because it will help with satiation. But then at some point, you're going to feel dead. Like Brian, you just said that that sloshy feeling. And Jeff, you were talking about how you were sitting down to wash your truck. I remember vividly when I used to work at the hospital, I would grab a chair and take it around with me as I was processing all of my X-ray films. I'd take a chair over to my computer station and start putting in all my little patient information stuff, and people would make fun of me. They're like, "Why is he dragging that chair around with him?" It's because your legs are dead. You don't feel like you can walk, much less stand, you know? But yeah, that was what I did early on. That's kind of what I kind of fall back on, but there's ways to kind of help that energy, you know, as well. With Jeff was nice enough to teach me last year. But yeah, protein, that is very satiating. That's kind of always my thing that I go to. But I've seen the light and know that we have to kind of rearrange things at some point, which I'm sure we're going to get into. But yeah, I mean, those were my hunger hacks that I would do last year. Canned pumpkin. I mean, my digits were orange, you know, from so much canned pumpkin because of the volume that comes along with it, you know. Matt Ogus's gigantic, you know, bowls of salads and, you know, zucchini and, you know, everything that's stuffed into that with the volume. But yeah, those were kind of my hacks and my go-tos. And what do you guys have, you know, as far as your input on staving off hunger?
I just did a YouTube video on this actually,
Mm-hmm.
and I prepped 15 times. This is my 16th, I think. And over the course of those preps, like the last 30 years, I've kind of identified 3 different types of hunger. I don't think we can't just lump it all as like you're just hungry. There's different reasons why. Like one of them is just you're just physically hungry, and that would be like you feel it in your gut. Like damn, it's like you're food focused, you're hungry, you got low energy. It's like physically you're just feeling it. The other hunger would be like emotional hunger. And yeah, so this is like, you know, you can be like just out of it in a given day for whatever reason. You're having a bad day, you turn to food for comfort, and you're eating when you probably shouldn't be because of that. And then the last one is I got a brain fart right now. My brain's going empty on this one. Social hunger. It's basically when you're, you know, with your family or friends, you're out at a restaurant, whatever, you're out at parties or stuff like that. Like you don't want to be the guy that's sitting there not eating because then all the attention's on you. You don't really want to deal with that type of stuff. So you end up eating just to try to fit in when you probably shouldn't be eating. So there's like, those are the 3 that I've identified. Someone was nice enough to comment on the YouTube video that as far as like the women, they also have their cycles that they deal with. So there's hunger around that. So there's different types of hunger, which means if you can identify when, like if in a, like if you're dealing with a certain type of hunger in the moment, you can identify it, then you can have a better strategy to work through it. Because you can't just say, oh, I'm going to use this strategy to work on emotional hunger when you're not dealing with emotional, it's more physical. So I think identifying like the type of hunger that you're going through in the moment is pretty important. So that's something that I've kind of identified with myself. Like I can establish what I'm actually dealing with in the moment because of the experience level. Like personally, I probably struggle the most with emotional hunger than I do the physical and the social aspect. So and Berto knows this pretty good. I'll eat a stack of like 33 rice cakes in a row. It's like, okay, after 7 of them, like I'm not physically hungry anymore. It's just like, why am I continuing to eat these? So it's just more of like whatever I'm going through in a given part of my life is usually what I turn to, like food as a comfort. So I kind of know that about myself, and I try to strategize. And some of the coping mechanism with that for me, it's like I'll just talk to my wife. You know, I'll just say, hey, you know, this is how my day's gone. I'm struggling with this or that, and whether she has solutions or not, it doesn't matter. It's just the fact that I'm talking with somebody and getting out helps out quite a bit. It could be just going for a walk or just, you know, laying down and just chilling out or watching TV or reading a book. Like it's just basically escaping from whatever I'm dealing with in the moment. So there's that. There's the physical hunger. I mean, that's easy as just like, hey, let's just get a protein shake and an apple. It takes 2 minutes. It's done. I don't have to sit there and spend an hour in the kitchen trying to figure out some meal. I could just take care of the physical hunger in the moment. And then the social aspect is I think there's strategize. The way I strategize for that is If I could plan ahead, I'll plan ahead. But if I'm in the moment, then it comes down to like having awareness and being aware of your choices in the moment. But that's kind of, I just want to talk about like identifying certain hunger before we think about strategies.
Where would you fit like flavor in there, Jeff? Because I know something that I struggle with is I get a little taste of chocolate and I can't stop eating it. It's not really emotional hunger. It's not really physical hunger. It's almost like
Why do you eat it in the first place?
that flavor part. It's like I have a little room in my macros for this. And I mean I should probably give this in two contexts, right? When it comes to prep, it's like I had a little bit of room for my macros for this, and so I kind of weighed it out and planned it, and then I have some of it, and then it's like I really need to battle to keep from going back to that
It's a
that
trigger
bag
food.
again because I got that little exactly like you with the Biscoff spread, right? And then in the off season, it does when I'm not paying attention to that flavor, that trigger food. I'll put the bag back. I'll put the bag on the top shelf. I'll put the bag away in the pantry, and man, it's calling my name. I kind of go back to that. So with your guys, I know for me, a hack is I got to make my food kind of bland, and I got to put that chocolate away. I got to make sure that the wife hides it when I'm deep in prep, and I can't have that. But where would you kind of fit that flavor, that trigger food that comes along with hunger?
I think so. Like we've kind of arrived at similar places, Jeff. Like for me, there's appetite and then there's hunger. Like they're two different things. Like
Yeah.
hunger is like, oh shoot, like my
You're gonna
normal
eat your
eating
arm off.
windows. It's getting like it's expanding a little bit longer than I'm used to at this point in the day. That's hunger. Um, Appetite is maybe you just finished eating and I don't know, like a dirty as Whopper like commercial showed up on the screen, and that shit's nasty. Like it's gonna look like they never look like a commercials. Like it's like someone had sex with your burger before you got it. Like that's your Whopper. Um, but you want a Whopper, and you want a Whopper. Yeah. And I think yours, Brad, is kind of it kind of closes into that third thing, which is sometimes these things are kind of interrelated. Like your food can be a coping mechanism. Like we're all like stress eaters by default. Like if you train and you need food to adapt, guess what? You're a stress eater, right? It's just when is it serving you? When is it not? So usually what people do with whatever bad habit it is, like a deep dark side, and maybe it's alcohol, right? It's like when you have a rough day at work, it's like, man, I'm not just gonna have my beers. I'm gonna have me a little bit of that hard stuff too tonight, right? So the chocolate, I think to you, Brad, is probably you've probably have found comfort in it a few times. So you've kind of opened up that box a few times, and you've kind of reestablished that pattern over and over. So now there's this feedback loop there. But yeah, a big part of and where I kind of consolidate a lot of these two eventually, like because it's usually all three, but like in different it's like an emotional need, like an appetite, like an idea that like someone else put in there. Like maybe it's like Cynthia got something better at a restaurant than I can at this point, things like that. And then true hunger, right? It always goes back to like, but how much of this is also powered by self-pity when it comes to like what you're feeling? And think about when you're getting after it at the gym. It's like, it could be the most terrible set, but you're like, there's not an ounce of you that's like feeling self-pity when you're on. Your training partner's like, you're having a hard time, and he's like right there, like fuck yourself up, fuck yourself up. Like, so it's kind of the same thing with this. It's like sometimes I have to like stop and think how much of this is just self-pity, and self-pity, quite useless of an emotion. It's good to identify it and pick it up, but doesn't really have you make the best like decisions. So I'd consider that, yeah, kind of a trigger food. Closest thing I have to that is just honey bunches of oats. And when I think about it, it's like, oh, you fucked up your diet a few times on like honey bunches of oats. Like you've like I've never gone straight rogue, but a serving that was supposed to be for breakfast turned into like I'm borrowing from like the rest of the meals this day, like sort of deal, you know? So it's yeah, it's a dirty habit, I guess, right? In a way, in the right context it is. I think that's what the chocolate is. But yeah, for me it's usually hunger, appetite. It's either one of those two, but an emotional need like is huge, huge, huge. And usually when you have this emotional need, like you resort to self-pity instead of like maybe something healthier, like what Jeff is doing here, you know? Because I'm sure when you speak to someone, Jeff, it kind of washes out a lot of that self-pity aspect. Like you could be more objective and you just kind of have your emotions and like all these things that are stressing you kind of there laid out, and everything becomes a lot more clear. And all of a sudden you're not thinking about how many rice cakes can I have? Because you understand that that's not going to help at all, really.
Well, my last prep in 23, like I still struggle with this 30 years later. It's like I'm not exempt from it just because I have experience. Like last year in 2023, I just remember like, do I really want to do this? Like, do I really want to make myself hungry, go under 10% body fat? Like for what? Like I was going through that mindset for a while. And I remember Mayan from Israel, who obviously was prepping during wartime. I'm like, here she is, like there's missiles going over her head, but yet she's still adhering to her diet. She's doing 25,000 steps a day because that's just her. That's just a normal day for her, 25,000. Like, I'm like, okay, here I am doing 10,000. She's doing 15,000 more than me. She's eating far less than I am. And she's got missiles going over my head. And I'm having a talk in my mind at lunchtime about the second pita that I want to eat, the pita bread. I'm like, this one pita is holding me back from where I really want to go. So when I thought about all that, and I remember having this conversation in my mind at lunch, it was like a 5-minute conversation in my brain. I'm like, just stop eating that frickin' second pita. It basically just took me to realize like someone else's experience, like what they're going through, which basically made mine like very small in comparison. I know we all going to have our own experience, our own feels, but when I compared it that way, it just like, it made it so easy not to want that second pita or to want Biscoff spread and stuff like that, or to eat 33 rice cakes in a row. Because I didn't have that perspective and mindset in 2011 or 2014. So it's like I've had to like in a sense like look at other people's experiences and try to put myself in their shoes and try to figure out what maybe they're experiencing. That's the thing is like even like looking at Dirk, it's like I look at that, I'm like, gosh, that's gotta hurt. Like he's got
That's
it.
exactly what I think.
Maybe he
Yeah.
endures better than me, but it's still like for him, I'm sure it doesn't feel pleasant all the time. It's like everybody who looks a certain way has had their own struggles. Like even you, Berto, I know you probably tolerate dieting a lot, probably better than all of us here. But it's like it's not as easy as the off season where you're eating more food. Like you're still experiencing some things. So I just try to put myself in other people's shoes. Not like say, oh, I wish I can eat as much as that person, or whatever. But actually try to think about what they've gone through to get to that stage. Because everybody has a story and everybody struggles to a certain degree. So that was just like that like changed like that 2023 prep, like middle of the way through going through that. It basically just hardened me in a sense. And I just said, okay, I just got to keep the goal and keep going.
Yeah.
That's still to this day. Like I've coached a lot of people to this stage over 15 years. Her prep by far, the most hardest prep ever. And I find it like super inspiring that she was able to go all the way to the finish line, take top 5 at Worlds in that type of environment. It's pretty inspiring.
That is impressive.
Hey 30MJers, this is Coach Jeff Alberts here to talk about the biggest issue every serious lifter faces, and that's the issue of time. Unlike some other skill-based activities and sports that might slow progress in a matter of days, strength training is a much slower biological process. The consistent, long-term effort it takes to put on muscle can leave most eager athletes spinning their wheels, second-guessing themselves, switching programs every month, and generally living life with a lack of confidence in their approach. All of these common pitfalls are the exact reasons why most lifters can waste years of their lives without making any meaningful progress towards their physique goals. But it's not really their fault. Even if a bodybuilder wants to be self-sufficient and tries to learn about their chosen craft, most online content is far too short to create a complete picture of what it means to live the life of a successful, serious lifter. Aspiring athletes often piece together cookie-cutter programs and quick-fix strategies from various influencers, only to be left in the same spot every 6 months. They don't get long-term results because they don't understand how training programming and nutrition planning actually work in the real world and how they work together. But we created a 3DMJ Vault to change that. The Vault, an entire ecosystem of over 25 video courses that gel together to create a complete learning academy for bodybuilders who want a genuine understanding of the sport. We won't just teach you what to do, we'll teach you how and why you're doing it. And once you fully understand the principles, we'll teach you how to tailor a customized approach for your goals, your physique, and your lifestyle. The Vault includes all of the video lectures, training programs, and nutrition plans you need to build a solid foundation as a serious lifter. To purchase our entire library of past, present, and future courses, go to 3dmjvault.com to sign yourself up today. You can get all access to all courses with a one-time purchase of a lifetime VIP membership or a one-time purchase of a single-year VIP membership. We made the Vault to create the future 3DMJ athletes we want to coach to the stage, and it's been doing exactly that since 2018. It also continues to grow over time as we add new courses every year that are always included for VIP members in the one-time purchase price. If you're serious about your lifting career and are willing to put in the work, we're confident that the Vault is everything you need to establish a bodybuilding lifestyle that supports your physique goals as a self-guided athlete for years to come. Get all access at 3dmjvault.com today. Again, that's 3dmjvault.com. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the rest of the show.
Like, what are some of the levers you guys pull in order to mitigate some of this? Obviously, these feelings are going to present themselves depending on your individual situation, experience level, like the magnitude of what you're feeling. But I think, Brad, when you were talking about the chocolate, for me, it's like an accessibility issue. Like my vice is like tortilla chips. I love tortilla chips, but if they're not in the house, it's not like I'm running out to get them, in order to fulfill a craving. And so I think prep is one time where if you can limit accessibility to things that you're susceptible to falling off track with, then that's not a bad thing. And, it's a different environment than like in the off season, you almost want some exposure to foods you enjoy and learn how to moderate. But in prep, it's like you're just wired a little bit differently, and that can kind of cascade pretty easily. So I know for me, like food availability and just keeping the diet kind of not bland, but not too exotic. I don't want to be spending more than 10 minutes preparing a meal. I think getting in and out of the kitchen, most of the meals I make in prep are, I can't remember the last time I made a meal in prep that was more than 4 ingredients. It's like I'm not concocting any high volume, playing the volumetrics game, which I think is what a lot of first-time preppers oftentimes lean into. It's like, okay, well, I'll just eat more volume of food. My stomach will feel fuller. This will resolve it. And as one of you mentioned earlier, it's like this is a body fat issue. And you'll see like people post-show, they eat themselves sick because it's like their brain isn't receiving that satiety signal, or they've got an appetite for more food, but they just physically can't hold more food. And so that's a really weird feeling to have if you've never experienced it, where it's like you're going back for more even though you're uncomfortable. and I think that's a good example of why this isn't just a volume game. And I'd be curious to hear your guys' opinions and experiences on this, but the people that I've prepped, and even myself, the more I try to hack my hunger and try to work around it, with the exception of maybe food availability, I think that's a pretty easy hack if there's something that you're susceptible to, as a trigger food. But it's never like trying to play the high volume food game. Like it just makes things worse for me. You're in the kitchen preparing more food. It's on your mind more. Like there's a higher degree of food focus that's involved in that game. And the other one that I think a lot of people would be better off doing is going through their like Instagram feed and just getting rid of like the food porn posts that people start, looking at later in prep. Okay, let's scheming about, what they're going to eat after the show, or how can I make a macro friendly version of this? And I mean, you can, but it's going to suck. Like you just have to accept that. And that kind of falls under the umbrella of accessibility. It's like, you want to limit the accessibility of those like emotional triggers as well. I think that goes a long way.
I think for me, I think what's important is you're setting up a good structure and routine with your food, like a daily routine with it. Like most bodybuilders, they're usually really good about their routines. Like you get myself out of a routine, that's where I have more susceptibility to eating more than I should. Like I just went on a family vacation. That was a little bit of a challenge trying to stick with things because I was just out of my normal routine. So personally, it's like my breakfast looks very similar. The times I eat, the types of foods I eat, same thing with lunch, dinner. And I think about, as far as strategy, where I need the most energy. So that's where I'm going to put most food. So where I'm more idle, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be as hungry there. Like sitting at the desk, working with athletes, like I don't need a large breakfast. I can just push more calories towards lunch because I train in the afternoons. So my training is going to be more fueled. I'm going to have better recovery if I'm eating more post-training. So I think from that strategy standpoint, is where do I need the energy during the day? Because that's going to determine like where I'm putting calories. And as far as number of meals per day, it's like, yeah, I'll think about the hunger and the satiety, but also think about practicality. Like, I don't want to be a prisoner to my kitchen all day long and it's getting in the way of life. It's getting in the way of like doing things with my son, things like that. And like you said, Brian, I don't want to spend an hour in the kitchen trying to come up with some huge volume meal that only has like 300 calories. And then 30 minutes later, I'm hungry again. Like, that's not very efficient or very productive. So I think just like it's important that especially if you're someone who's just starting prep, like first time doing it, like write down a structure, write down like a flow to your day. That's what I did back in the day when I first started prepping in the early 90s. I was a robot. And I know when flexible dieting was a thing, then, we were bashing the robotic bodybuilders, the bro bodybuilders back then. But there's a lot of value to having that type of robotic system, especially if you're new, is once you get that good routine in place, then especially if you're very consistent with it, because you're creating a baseline. And from that baseline, you get to identify, like, maybe you have your meals set up a certain way. Or like, oh, you know what, I'm more hungry in the mornings, I have more calories in the afternoons. So maybe, okay, now you need to redistribute that. So that way you're more satiated in the morning times, and now you're even keeled when it comes to your hunger and your energy levels. So just having a nice structure in the very beginning and running it, don't change anything, then you could start assessing, identifying what needs to be revised, and you start tweaking it from there. So I think that's number one. Of course, we could look at food sources and things like that. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be eating Skittles. Rather have oatmeal, because obviously oatmeal is going to take longer to digest. But yeah, I don't think we should be eating like based off of entertainment or our taste buds in a sense. Like Brad, for example, you're like, oh, I'm going to save 200 calories for a chocolate. It's like, well, if it's a trigger food, like 200 calories is not enough. You're going to end up eating 1,000 calories of chocolate. So it's like your mentality should be like, food should be a tool to get you to where you want to go. It's not for entertainment. Like off season is more entertainment. So that's like, I get myself into that mindset, like, okay, full food is not like, okay, maybe once a week or whatever, a refeed, like I'm going to incorporate, something that's a little bit more exotic or a little more exciting into my diet. But like, let's just keep it, like you said, Brian, like a little more on the bland side, not where it tastes terrible, but it's not like, you know, it's got to be some gourmet meal every single meal. You just keep it straightforward. And maybe you're like 10% of the time, you're treating yourself something that's a little bit different.
I think you can have that structure and still have flexibility too. And so,
100%.
one thing,
Yeah.
one thing I'll have some people do with prep is like, okay, let's say you're eating 4 times a day, like 4 protein feedings. Let's, allocate calories to when you're the hungriest, but let's have like 3 different options within each meal that you can pick from on a given day. And then one of them maybe is like a portable option. So you can be pliable if you have to, get something down quickly. But that way you can kind of still plug and play a little bit, but it restricts your options a little bit. It's like the Cheesecake Factory menu, how like overwhelming that is.
It's overwhelming. Yeah.
Like if you just had, like here are your daily specials and there's 4 things to pick from. There's a lot less food focus that goes into that, because when you're looking at the Cheesecake Factory menu, it's ironic that that's the place that we always go after shows, because you're like taking the most like volatile environment,
Has a little everything for everybody's personality.
yeah. But yeah, it's like you're auditing your cravings as you're looking down that menu. It's like, oh, does this sound good right now? Like, am I going to get full from this? And then, but if you just limit your options a little bit more, then it makes things just you free up so much mental bandwidth for things that are actually important, that are not going to take up a large, component of your day.
Like the course that Brad and I did, macros into meals. So basically it's like, select like 3 to 5 different proteins, select 3 to 5 complex carbs, 3 to 5 fruits, 3 to 5 vegetables, 3 to 5 healthy fats, create a menu based off of those foods. So you could create, let's say, 2 or 3 different ones, and you can rotate those. Like you can do one menu every week and switch it out, or you could do it every other day or whatever, but at least you have something that's not overwhelming, but it can serve as a nice template for you. So you're setting yourself up with a good structure. And it's just so much more efficient and simplified that way. Because when like I said, if you're just in the kitchen, you're like, what should I eat? I'm trying to make a gourmet meal here. Let's get creative. I know Berto has some stories of athletes being pretty creative, so, and it takes up a lot of time and energy that, like I said, if you're that hungry, that's the thing, is if you're starving, like the last thing you can do is sit in the kitchen. You're like, oh, I'm going to create this high volume meal.
Exactly. That's a good point.
I'm hungry for an hour more than you need to be. Where I can just, let me grab a Fuji apple and a protein shake, and 2 minutes later, I'm not hungry anymore.
That's a great point. I mean, that's kind of distinguishing between appetite and hunger.
Yeah.
Like if you're, that's a good point.
I can move on and do other more important things in the day besides worry about what I'm going to eat.
It's funny, when flexible dieting first became popular, it was like kind of a flex. Like every day is a little bit different,
Yeah.
It's like no 2 days were the same, but it sure made prep harder in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's kind of not completely full circle, but there's a middle ground there that you can really benefit from being in.
I think when looking for things to make it more efficient, or weed out some of the unnecessary suffering, because again, I'm going to use this over and over. It's like compared to exercise, because we're all quite familiar with that and how strenuous that is. It's like there's good pain and there's bad pain, right? Like there's, this lift's hurting me, but everyone's telling me I have to do it, and again, early on, people, it's just all pain to them. But, once you get to the point where you're a little more competent and you like your training, okay, like translate that over here. And like we keep telling you guys, it's like eventually you'll be able to take things from this prep and be able to put it into other aspects of life. So, but big thing to look out for is just, and I think this is less and less of an issue, because I'm always kind of listening at like little whispers in the gyms, like when it comes to like what the trainers around here are doing. Look for stuff that's just like, I guess, get rid of the stuff that's like wasted motion. That's just like folklore. right? Like if your trainer has you eating 6 meals, 8 meals, and you're in like 1,200 calories, like what, right? So it's good to understand like the things that are just these foundational fundamentals, right? Like understand that part so that you don't have to stress about checking certain things off the list that like, bro, no one said you have to eat tilapia 4 times a day. Like nobody, right? You don't have to, again, like skimp your 1,200 calories into like 8 meals or whatever, right? So look at all the non-efficient things. And I think what flexible dieting did, like the first gen, is like it really focused on like the things that matter, but you need that structure. And how much freedom you get, well, that's just going to depend on the athlete. Just like you have to like for me as a coach, it's like I feel like I'm fucking raising kids here to play the sport, and they're all at different levels. Like what I do with the 4-year-olds very different compared to the 8-year-olds, to the 12, to the high school. And there's a certain level where it's just like, no, you don't get that freedom. You don't get to make that decision. Like this is what we're doing. And that's that, because I think this is what is best for you. And you might have to make some of those calls for you where it's like, guess what? You get to have no honey bunches of oats in your house because you're not ready for that yet. So, and when you create your structure, it's going to be very similar to a training plan. I'm sure you guys have written a training split or plan that you're like, oh, this looks good. And then you go in there and like you actually run the thing and you're like, whoa, this isn't what I thought it would be. It's off in so many ways. So the same thing with the structures. Like try some structures. You can borrow from other people and things they do. But at the end, ultimately, what flexible dieting I think should have been called, or the actual goal is to be an educated dieter, and then based off what you know, make the decisions that make the most sense in real time. So you apply those principles, and then over time you'll see that they'll grow. And I'm sure you guys have. There's probably like between all of us here, even when we're like deep into the off season, like we probably eat like 12 of the same meals over and over, you know. But everyone's looks vastly different, and I think that's what true flexible dieting was trying to do. Is like, hey, let me bring you up to speed on like the principles of this thing, what actually makes this thing go, and then from there, like please use this power for good, to like simplify, to not make this your entire life. Which I think it's slowly getting better, but yeah, first thing I look for is just wacky things that people are doing that I'm like, you don't really have to be fucking doing that. And then from there, it's like, okay, we have to, there's our goals, and then there's like all the other things that you have like going on in life. There was a prep for actually at some point where, because to me, the most important meal when you're prepping is probably the pre-training meal if we're just being very hyper-focused. Where my pre-training meal was actually before I went in to work with a bunch of kids. Like that was actually the biggest meal of the day, because I just needed 4 hours of like being like on, because I'm taking care of like 20 something kids. I can't lose one of these kids. So yeah, like everyone's final like plan, and this will change many times over, especially over the course of the prep, is going to be vastly different. But you need to understand, like, you need to go read the muscle and strength pyramids, like if you haven't, because then we can start talking about true customization beyond like what your caloric needs are.
Yeah, and relying on that structure, I know that gets me through times when I don't have, I'm away from home and I don't have my fridge right there, and I don't have my foods to go through, because I can lean on my structure, and I know right now, I know the times of day that I'm hungry, and I know the times of the day that I eat, and relying on my structure and just keeping that structure when I'm traveling and when I'm going other places, that's really what kind of gets me through. Because with my structure in the morning, I just get a protein feeding, and then usually about 2, 3 hours after that, I'm hungry, and I just kind of flow that into what I'm doing when I'm traveling. I don't have my protein shake there, but there's a breakfast downstairs, and I'll just go down there and have some of them shitty powdered eggs, and then get me through my next 2, 3 hours, and then I'm hungry again. And then usually when I'm hungry, I know that about probably an hour or so, I'm going to have my next meal. And sure, I don't have my go-to meal there with me, but I just kind of eat to the same fullness levels with roughly the same food, But that structure, that gets me through, those times when I don't have my go-to foods and I don't have my 12 meals that I am circulating, every fourth day or, kind of whatever. And that's something that I really instill in a lot of people when they're asking me, "Hey, coach, I got this coming up. What do you think I should do?" And just that's a lot of times my advice. Let's audit things here a little bit. How do you get through your day, and let's just try to keep that and know that you're not just going to have your regular foods that you usually have. I know that one thing I want to talk about real quickly when we talk about suffering and starvation, last year, when I was prepping, for the very first time, I actually felt the panic of starvation. And there's a little bit of backstory to it, but basically, we shop once a month. We shop once a month at the Sam's Club. We get all the food that we need that gets us through the whole month. And usually by the end of the month, things are a little bit skim in the cupboard there. And then we know it's time to go get more food, right? And maybe there's a little bit of a trauma from when I was a kid. When I was a kid, there was a lot of times when there was no food in the cupboard, and so there might have been a little bit of trauma from that. But I remember I was shredded. I was, I think, 5 or 6 weeks out from the showing. We got to the end of the month, and the cupboards were looking pretty bare. And I actually experienced panic because I was hungry and I didn't have my go-to foods in there. And there was really not very much food in the cupboard. And that was the first time that I had ever really experienced, like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going to die. I'm hungry. I've got no body fat. And there's like next to no food in the house. Needless to say, we went shopping the next day and I did live. It was obviously I'm here, right? I made it through there. But man, that physiology of hormones and emotions and what the body kind of resorts to when like real starvation kicks in and you've got no like real accessible foods that are right there. Man, that was a strange feeling. I had never experienced that before. And I'm kind of glad that I went through it, to be honest with you, because it gave me a little bit of a perspective. But not having any food in the house, knowing that I got to eat here in about an hour and I'm shredded and starving, man, that was a way different feeling. And so maybe we were going out on a ledge here, but when it comes to those hormones, those hunger hormones, how screwed up they get in prep, and the leptins and the ghrelins and all those get all out of whack. And Brian, you kind of touched on it earlier, when it's like I've got a food baby that's out past my toes. I can barely see my feet. And yet my physiology in my body is telling me, go get more food. It's so messed up. I think sometimes we need to kind of recognize that our bodies are in this point when it's going to say that we're hungry all the time. And what you need to do is kind of figure out and be resourceful and say, okay, Jeff, thank God last year he said, Brad, quit eating 220 grams of protein when you're 160 pounds. Let's take some of that protein away, shift it over to your carbohydrate, give you a little bit more energy. Basically, we reversed my carbs and my protein. And I'll be damned if after 4 days, yes, I was still hungry. Yes, it still felt like the inside of my stomach was stapled to my spine. But that I think it was about the fifth or sixth day, man, my energy came back. I can deal with hunger. I can deal with, sometimes you almost kind of strive for it. It's like I'm searching to be hungry because I know that it's paying off. But man, I could not believe the difference in just switching those numbers around, still being hungry, but now my energy came back and that dead feeling in my legs was gone. And it took a little bit of time, but boy, that was a godsend. And to all of the folks that I prepped prior to 2022, when I said, yeah, eat more protein, it kind of keeps you satiated. My apologies to you because I had not experienced that myself yet. So Anyway, maybe we are going on a ledge and talking about stuff we shouldn't be talking about with ghrelins and leptins and stuff like that.
You
But
just said
wanted to throw that out there.
You need glycogen, Brad. With the amount of training volume and all that, like you just didn't have the glycogen.
Duh.
to
Why didn't I
feel
know that? You know?
So you're just walking around chronically flat and just low energy. And in that state, though, it's like if you're constantly food focused and you're hungry, it's like you want to try to stay busy. Like I think that's a good cure to remove food focus is to keep yourself busy with other things besides focusing on food. So I mean, as a dad, I mean I'm pretty busy. I'm occupied with my kids, so it's like I don't even when I'm hungry, it's like I'm just passing time because I'm focused somewhere else. And I might even like go for a walk. I'm like, okay, my mind's not on hunger. At least I'm burning extra calories. I might be a little more hungry when I come back, but hey, I'm gonna have my next meal there, so I'm fine. So just keeping myself busy. That's something I think most preppers probably benefit from is like, don't sit on the couch watching Food Network while you're hungry and then writing down your next menu for your 200-calorie meal. It's going to take an hour. It's like, get off the couch, go do something.
Yeah, I think staying busy is probably the most advantageous thing you can do in prep. Just have another hobby. I think just getting a break from, like, you can go on a walk, but like try not to think about bodybuilding, listen to a podcast, try to learn something, new. I think that can be a good way to distract yourself. And I think once you go through this, like, yeah, we're hungry, but we're not, like Brad, you mentioned like that panic, but like normally we're not feeling like, okay, we're about to starve to death, And so if you just sit with that feeling
in the cupboard,
and realize that like once you sit with it a few times, you realize nothing really bad happened, then it's a lot easier to cope with. But that goes back to the experience thing. The other thing I think is sometimes people will rely pretty heavily on caffeine, and I think that can work against them near the end of prep a little bit. When we talk about hunger, like caffeine could, coffee can suppress your appetite some, but I think most people lean into it just because it's, gives them a short energy boost. But none of that is as beneficial as like good sleep. Usually anytime you have a prep day where you're like, I actually feel good today, it's usually coming off of a night of good sleep. So you have to be cognizant of that. You can't use caffeine as a crutch, or just drink energy drinks all day long and no water. I think that's something that's, some people do. And so, I think staying well hydrated and, adequate fruits and vegetables, those are the things that are within your control. And I think what we're all trying to say is like, there's things you can do to mitigate this, but you're not going to eliminate it. And that's okay. Like we don't need to or expect to.
I think they also have to look at too is like the protocols themselves. Because if you're dealing with high level hunger, like more than you're not, that's probably an issue. So it might be an overly aggressive prep.
Yeah.
So you might have to like think about like maybe the timeline set up from the get go. Maybe it's like it's a rush prep. So now you're forcing things. You're driving high hunger, low energy. So you're gonna be more susceptible to binges and things like that. So I think you have to assess like if you're dealing with high level hunger and it's prolonged, like that's probably a red flag. Like there's probably something wrong with protocols there. What about binges? You guys want to talk about binges? It's part of hunger. Like I don't know if Berto's ever binged though. Like I never heard him say he's binged before, but almost all competitive bodybuilders have probably had a binge or two somewhere. So it's like, obviously we're talking about hunger. So it's like, we're going to have pitfalls. We're like, okay, we overate to a certain degree. Like, what do you guys do to prevent that from happening or like fixing them once they occur? Like what's some of the strategy there?
I actually experienced my first binge last prep. I never, believe it or not, I have never really binged during prep. In fact, one time I considered a binge, I had 2 extra rice cakes and I had 2 rice cakes on my menu instead of 4. The last year, I actually did kind of somewhat have that binge. And I talked about this, I think, in a couple of podcasts ago when we had that really good doctor's appointment for my wife and we went to that Indian food buffet. And I was not planning on eating all of the food that was there. But man, it was good environment. It was good food. The wife had a great, doctor's appointment. And yeah, I probably polished off 4,000 calories right there. But I know that my mindset was not, let's fix this. Let's not rob Peter to pay Paul. My mindset was basically, as Berto would say, take an amnesia pill, just try to forget that it happened and then get back to your structure, get back to get back to the feelings that you need. Because the very next day, I was not hungry at all. And in fact, I tracked the food on that day that I did eat, and I think it was barely 1,000 calories, and most of that was protein. I got up the next morning, I was not hungry. I just had my coffee and put a little protein in it. Barely ate kind of throughout the day, just kind of some protein boluses. But yeah, I'm not real good. I'm probably not the person to talk about binges because that's the one binge that I've had during prep. Now, after prep, yeah, we all know that I've had binges after prep. I've talked about those many times, but yeah, I'm not really the one to rely on that too much.
I see binges as is similar to a weight room injury. Again, going back to the weight room, because this is how people are going to be able to build bridges, because usually our people are way better at training before they're good at dieting. And sometimes injuries just happen because we've heard that they're multifactorial. A lot of shit we don't know. Just the cost of doing business sometimes. Um, but quite often it's like you probably went like too far right now. Um, so it usually happens for most people like during a contest prep. Like it's usually not like during the off season or casual fat loss phases. Like that is the load that broke that threshold. They went from like, I could do 500 for 3 reps on the deadlift, like put 600 on that thing. Let's get it. And whoa, you snapped her back up. Who would have thought? Right. So a lot of it is just you not knowing how to, because again, when these things happen, like, first of all, like the logical part of you understands that, this binge, no matter how much you eat today, is not going to fix you up. Like all the patches that we need, it's a long-term thing. It's going to take weeks. If you're new to this, probably months. So you kind of know that intuitively. But usually it was this energy that you should have directed somewhere else, right? So it was an emotional, quite often like a emptiness somewhere, something you weren't getting, that you want to go take it out on food most of the time. So if you usually trace back the situation, it's not because the roommate ordered all this pizza. There was all these things that were taking place before that, and boom, we have a binge. So most of the time it's that, because I think even very new folks are they're logical enough to understand that this is not going to fix like what I'm feeling. If anything, a lot of what I'm feeling is kind of normal. Um, they understand that it conflicts with what they're trying to go and it's going to set them back. But emotions are that strong sometimes. And what dieting does is it kind of turns you into, you're just not able to tolerate stress as well. We see it in the weight room, right? Like what you can tolerate in the off season versus like what you can tolerate like when you're near stage levels of body fat. They can be vastly different. And people understand that with the weight room. So when you cut their leg pressing from like 5 sets peak off season to 3, 2 maybe, they get it. But what they don't understand is that all the loose ends that you maybe have going on in your life right now, those things are going to come back to bite you when you're over here trying to handle your business and get to these new levels of body fat. And that's most of the time when we have a contest prep injury or a binge. And they can get so bad, in fact, like weight room injuries, that person's just never the same. They expose themselves to way too much before they had their life right in order to go do that, before they developed as an athlete. And we've seen it. We've seen people who we've competed with before, and we see them years later and we're like, whoa, 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 like you don't even look like the same person. Like they can't even do um, the fundamental parts of this sport anymore because they're that tapped out from all the overexposure that took place. No different than a guy whose right leg is going now because knee blew out and he's not able to do much with that quad anymore. We see it all the time. The whole overexposure and not understanding how everything is kind of interconnected at the end. But yeah, usually it's something you're missing emotionally that food kind of you thought you convince yourself is taking care of that for you, but it really wasn't. I think that's why I've never truly binged is because one, I'm extremely introverted. To this day, I think I'm still the most introverted person I know. I'd much rather spend time in my own head than with almost anyone else. My daughter might be the exception. But also, like, I think I've I somehow like stumbled upon doing this in the right order where like I didn't track a single calorie until like year 7 or 8. So I developed all these other skills like, clean eating. Like I never understood the binging. I tried to go to IHOP after a prep once and I felt like, I don't know, like the gay guy who's still in the closet at a strip bar with his friends. Like it doesn't tickle me that way, but I can see that very clearly. There's other things that absolutely like do tickle me that way, and I can see that sort of connection. Um, but food just isn't one of those things. But I see people do that all the time, and it's hard because there's one thing we're wired to do is freaking eat. So no one should feel guilty about that. Because like I said, you fuck with people's food, they get all sorts of weird all of a sudden. So this is where I think this is the confusing part to a lot of people about the sport. It's like, you want to do this for a plastic trophy, hold up Mr. Olympia that just, he's taken off like 15 years off his life to get like, what is it, 500, 800K? He can kick field goals for a living and make way more than that. Like a big part of it is this part. I think even with the heavily enhanced guys, the IFBB guys, a big part of it is putting yourself through this and growing through it. So yeah, like it's a wonderful tool because of that, because it fucks with your food at times. It fucks with that primal urge to survive, to be selfish. It eventually can help you get to know yourself better. But that's what binges are. I think binges are, it's like, what a time, if anything. I try to spin it in a positive way. Like, let's reflect on like what was taking place in your life, like right before this. Because this is usually something super serious. This is the one time that like bodybuilding can like really like freaking help you out. And I'm not saying that I left that job for someone else, but I've had a lot of athletes have these aha moments where they're like, oh shoot, like I'm gonna go talk to my therapist about this, like this upcoming week, because things are very clear all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think all of you brought up good points there. I've definitely binged post show, and I've definitely had kind of like the honey bunches of oats thing, kind of overdid it at breakfast. During preps, I've never gone drastically over. Not that I haven't wanted to or had the urge to, but I think I've been able to, just like I said earlier, just kind of sit with it and know that it's going to pass. And it always does. And so I think that's my biggest piece of advice is like, if it's uncomfortable sitting there and you want to binge, just allow yourself to kind of marinate in that for a bit, and it'll slowly, it's like exposure therapy. You'll start to become acclimated to it. It's not going to feel like as much of a stressor after a while.
Like this is a pain you signed up for. Like imagine if you were
Exactly.
popping Tylenol for some leg extensions. Like
Yeah.
what? Like that's not the
Yeah.
point to this, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the real magic. It's just, of course, like be aware of what you can actually tolerate, because that's probably not what you think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of it, I mean, like you said earlier, Jeff, sometimes like if you're ravenously hungry 24/7, like it could be too aggressive of an approach. And so like is a coach, if somebody reports a binge, like naturally the first thing for me to do is like, okay, are we being too aggressive? Is this exacerbated by the protocol itself? And sometimes, I have pulled the deficit back a little bit. Other times it could be something in their personal life, and they're chasing short-term gratification for whatever reason. So yeah, I think it's normal. The one thing I recommend people or would strongly discourage is like proactively trying to clean it up the next day, where it's like, okay, I went over 2,000 calories, or 3,000, whatever. Now tomorrow, like, should I fast? Should I do extra cardio? And like that's just a slippery slope. What I tell people is, if you wake up, like what Brad said, like he wasn't hungry at all the next day. Some people are going to still be hungry the next day. Like there's people where you refeed and it's just kind of like putting fuel on the fire in a way. But if your appetite naturally wants to reduce intake, that's one thing. But don't try to, pay it back with a reduced deficit the next day, because then you're going to go into the day after that ravenously hungry. It's just there's no coming back from that, and so you just have to really accept it. Just get back on track. If maybe it helps it. I always tell people, if you binge, like weighing in, like it should be data that you can use for decision making.
Yeah.
If you binge, what's the point of weighing in the next day when it's going to be an inflated
It's just
number?
going to make you even more emotional than what you already are.
Yeah, exactly. So like
maybe
maybe
the reason for wanting to fix it is because you're seeing the binge as a negative, like you did something wrong. If you think about it from a survival mechanism, if you're that hungry, that starving, if you're that emotionally distraught about something, like you're basically eating to fix that state. And if you're, let's say you're 6% body fat, like a binge would actually, like if you're in the real world, you're in the caveman world, you've been basically every day starving, you're slowly starving yourself, lifting heavy things along the way, and you find this giant brontosaurus burger, you're not going to go, well, let me just eat like a quarter of that. And you're going to eat until you can't eat no more because you don't want to starve and die. So when you think from that perspective, a binge is actually could be a positive thing. It's just we're living in this world where bodybuilding is a sport. We got to show our abs. Like that's like, if you think about it, it's like it's not that important. So if you frame it that way, like you said, you get back on the horse and you just keep going. Well, now you're well fueled. You're basically just reset yourself. If you think, okay, I binged because it was just physically way too demanding. Okay, now I need to, like you said, with some of your athletes, you're like, okay, let me not make the deficit so aggressive. So you actually increase your calories from the old baseline. And then you go from there. So it's like a binge can be a reset. And then your training is probably going to feel a lot better, obviously, because you're more fueled. But it's just, we have this, like, we just basically frame it as we're doing something wrong when we have this binge. Like, it might not be you, the athlete, that you did something wrong. It could be maybe it's the coach or you yourself who set up your own protocols or whatever. It's just overly aggressive for that point. But that's how you learn, though. It's like, okay, you go through that, you learn. Okay, now we just improve upon it thereafter. I just had a guy like a month ago. He binged once. I'm like, okay, these things happen. Get on the horse, keep going. 10 days later, happened again. Like right there, I'm like, okay, I know this is way too aggressive for him. And diet break for about a week. And then after that, I basically set him up with higher calories than where he was before, level it out. And like now he's perfect. He's far more stable. Like hunger levels, energy levels, just far more stable. Granted, the rate of loss is a little bit slower, but that's okay because we have time. That's how I set it up, like with plenty of time to make these types of adjustments.
There's a time to turn it into a big deal. And then there's a time where like you got to kind of let your athlete know, like, oh, everything's okay. Like, let's walk through this. And this might just be a one-time thing. And then there's times where, again, we ask all the questions where it's like, okay, like we should probably, outside of this, like you said, Jeff, it's at the end, it's a little like simulation. Like it's a little game of pretend that we got going on here. There's times where it's like, this is not worth like your, the real important, like real things in life. And then there are times where it's like, hey, don't turn this into a bigger deal than it is. Because sometimes you will have people who freak out because they had an extra 300 calories or something. So yeah, a lot of it is, and this is what a good coach knows, like what questions to ask, what signs to look for.
Yeah.
And then from there, proceed in the right way.
Because quite often, if you just okay, this is where the data in the spreadsheet comes in handy, the weigh-ins, the calories. You could kind of see what the lead-in is as it goes into the binge. Like, how invasive was that? What
Yeah.
did that actually look at? Like, how many refeeds did you have prior to that, or diet breaks prior to that? Like, you might have been just way too tapped out, and no matter how much willpower you were trying to have, you just weren't going to be able to fight it off. So it's no fault of your own. That's just how the lead in was. Now with that data, now moving ahead, we know how to better set this up. And then if you think of like, okay, if I have X number of weeks from this point to get you to stage, we still have ample time with this adjustment that we're making to make the process less invasive, slow down your rate of loss, and just give us more flexibility. So if you show them the big picture like that, it kind of helps with the overall perspective. Because sometimes if you're, first time prepper, second ever, your mind's always here in the moment and your emotions are with that. It's hard for you to kind of take that big step and look like weeks in the past and weeks in the future and what that's going to look as the end product. So I think it's important that you're showing your athletes that, the bigger picture.
Well, because they see the big time athletes and they want to do what they're doing, and it's like, but hold up, like why does everyone else in other sports understand this? Like again, kids in fucking high school understand this, but like for some reason, adult like bodybuilders can't sometimes. Like it might not even be in the cards for you, or it might just take like a good decade for you to get there, and you have to be okay with that because that kind of pays respect to the work. And when you get there, you'll be like, I'm part of this exclusive club that wears this jacket. I freaking earned it. I didn't stumble upon it with like sheer willpower on my first prep. That's not how it goes.
It's I don't know where this stems from. Like, cause it's crazy. I look at this now, like as if we're like going through martial arts, like we're working on our belts. For some reason, like your first time prepper expects to have dirt glutes. It's like you're expecting to be a 5th-degree black belt, but yet you haven't even gotten past white belt yet. I don't know where that stems from, like where that thought process comes from. I don't know if it's just like it's the way it's being presented online, or it's being glorified a certain way, but it's just like you said, like every other sport, you kind of look at it and go, okay, I got to start off playing Little League Baseball. I'm not going to be like Nolan Ryan throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs like by next week.
Well, here's the thing.
Kids are like, who's Nolan Ryan?
Oh,
Google Nolan Ryan.
Pitched in 4 decades, man. But and here's the thing. Like, some people actually kind of make it somehow, and this is where, because judges only know what they're looking at. They don't know what's like the reason for things occurring that way sometimes. And this is where you hear the like, hey, this is not a dieting contest. Like you could have came a little forward. And it's just all that really happened there. It's like, because there's no way that you can explain to me, especially in the bodybuilding class, but honestly in most classes, because even with the bikini girls, you could just tell them, well, just don't flex that area. Like I have a round butt when it's striated. Like it looks round. Just, you can keep it that way. Like there's no way, it doesn't make sense. You get as lean as you can. You keep all your muscle, you peak well, you're full. How is that not a better look? But what these judges are usually looking at when they're like too lean, lost some of the fullness, is just, they were just overexposed. And it's usually either a skill issue with that coach or a skill issue with that athlete trying to go through some terrain they had no business going through. And boom, that is the final outcome. You have some guy that just looks over dieted, that in some cases you're like, I think he could have beat himself like 10 pounds, prior to that point. So yeah, like you could try to get it, but that's usually like what happens. I kind of by default, that happened to me the first time I got peeled. Like there was just a point where I was probably peeled at 160 and I weighed in for my like final set of shows, like 7 pounds lighter somehow. I had no business being there. And in retrospect, that set me back a lot as an athlete. on that note, I think going back to like what we were trying to discuss here is like the hacks. I think the biggest hack is just like, yeah, get like the main stuff in order. Like make sure the principles work. Don't do dumb things with like meal timing. Like figure out what works for you in regards to like how your calories should kind of be scattered and organized. Yeah, don't do dumb things like have a Snickers bar when you can have an apple or something, right? Like do all those basic things. There's nothing that we're necessarily hiding from you or anyone else is hiding from you. But at the end, it's just going to be like, just sit there and expose yourself to this. Like Brian, like I think one thing you said that I thought was key is like, I don't necessarily feel hunger no more because quite often people do confuse hunger for other things. It's other emotional needs. You're like, it's just energy at this point. And I think one of the things that make you a good dieter at this point is you know that you can't fix that overnight. So you choose to just kind of sit there in it and kind of take it as a chance to like ruminate, meditate, and just figure some stuff out. And really the only way you get better is by like I said, like Jeff has, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years living shredded. I have like 2 years of my life like living shredded. It's just like just chilling in that boat, not panicking, and just waiting that thing out. And that's how you get better. And at a certain point, like you don't run away from the pain like you would on a leg extension. You don't run away from it. It's like you're actively looking for more. And you understand how this is going to make you a better bodybuilder, how it's going to make you a better person, but you also understand like what your fucking limit is and like when it's like too far and it's time to like pull back. So biggest like hunger hack, I don't know, it's more of I think a lot of it's just like emotional hacks. It's just like really pay attention and face some things head on essentially.